Hello and welcome to Saturday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic on a stiflingly hot and humid day here in the UK. It's really clammy. I'm going to try and distract myself from the weather by having a look at a puzzle today that is no Sudoku. It's called Poseidon. It's by Shintaro Fushida-Hardy. And I remember Shintaro's name because Shintaro's first puzzle that we featured on the channel was sort of recommended by Reddit, of all things. And it started a whole sequence of puzzles that we've tried in which there are sort of killer cages that add up to different prime numbers. It was an immensely popular puzzle. I'll try and remember to put a link to it because it was brilliant and it spawned a whole genre. But this is no Sudoku. This is some sort of Yin-Yang puzzle with funny rules about the arrows. And I looked it up on Logic Masters Germany before I turned on the webcam. It has a 98% approval rating and just 2 stars out of 5 for logic for difficulty, which is which makes it sound quite approachable. So I'm hoping it will be. It's very rare actually. I get to do a puzzle that's not Sudoku on the channel. So I almost think we should have a day a week where we do some sort of other puzzle. And I don't know, that's a little idea. Let me know what you think of that. Anyway, I'll read you the rules of this in a moment or two's time. A couple of things to mention first. Our new app, very approachable Sudoku. Check it out. It's not designed to get you through these puzzles, logic puzzles, but it is designed to get you into variant Sudoku and sort of teach you the basics. You'll have a lot of fun. There's some absolutely lovely puzzles and nothing too challenging in that app. So I'll try and remember to put a link to that on the screen. What else? I've got birthdays to do. Running out of time. If you want to enter the competition over on Patreon this month, let me find the Skojo, Jojo and Jobo flyer. Here it is. You probably want to get starting to solve that quite soon if you want to be in with a chance of winning the competition. But there's loads of other extra stuff over on Patreon as well. Mark's been recording himself solving the New York Times puzzle Connections, which is sort of like Only Connect, if you're familiar with that game show. So I find those videos very entertaining. There's extra crossword content, loads of my solves of very, very hard puzzles as well. So check that out if you have any interest in that sort of thing. And birthdays, let me do the birthdays. I'll start off with Kaz. Kaz, you've turned 26 today, and I know this because your partner Ben wrote to us and told us that you've basically learned to solve cryptic crosswords by watching our Friday videos. That is, I love hearing things like that. So Kaz, well done, and thank you for watching so often as well. I hope you have a great birthday today with, of course, lots of chocolate cake. Next, Molly. Molly, you've turned 20 today, and I know this because your boyfriend Benny wrote to us and told us that you've watched every day for a year to wind down. So Molly, thank you for watching so regularly. And I hope you have a great birthday with cake, of course, as well. Next, from Athens, Panagiotta. What a beautiful name that is. Panagiotta's turned 64 today, a square number. And I know this because your son Alexandros wrote to us. I do hope the wildfires are calming down considerably now. And Panagiotta, you have a great birthday today. And then finally, Rachel. Rachel, you turned the big 4-0. And I know this because, is it Davidas? I hope I'm saying that correctly, wrote to us and told us rather delightfully that the two of you devote one lunchtime each week to solving a Sudoku, I presume together. But I like how regimented that sounds. So Rachel, many happy returns on your 40th birthday. I hope you have a great day with cake, of course. And that is all the news. So why don't we turn our attention to Poseidon? I have absolutely no clue why it's called Poseidon, but these are the rules of the puzzle. We've got Yin-Yang, so we have to shade some cells so that all shaded cells are orthogonally connected, all unshaded cells are orthogonally connected, and no 2x2 region is entirely shaded or unshaded. So I'm going to, normally when we do this, I do this sort of shape in the 9x9 Sudoku. Oh. Okay, so this is definitely not 9x9. This is 10x10. Right. Okay, well that's put a fly in the ointment, hasn't it? So we've got to do something like this. 2 interlocking combs. Boom. like that. So this pattern would be a valid yin-yang pattern. And the reason we know that is if we double click the greens, you can see that all the greens are connected across cells that have a long edge in common. If we were to instead add this one in, now we have broken the pattern, because this green square here, it touches two other green squares at points on the diagonal, but it doesn't share an edge with any other green cell, so that couldn't be correct. So you can see all the greens are connected. Similarly, all the purples are connected in the same way, and there is no area in the grid that is there's no 2x2 area that is entirely one color. So that is a valid yin-yang pattern. Now, the next rule says, in addition, place a digit from 1 to 9 in every cell with an arrow. This digit is the total number of shaded cells in the indicated direction, including the cell itself, if it is shaded. Okay. No two shaded cells can contain the same digit, and no two unshaded cells can contain the same digit. However, the same digit may occur once shaded and once unshaded. Yes, okay, I sort of understand that. And cells without arrows do not contain digits. Right, so we're only going to have to put a few digits into this puzzle. Let's count 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So 13, unlucky for some, we've got to write 13 digits in and do some shading, and then we'll be finished. What could be easier? Do have a go. The way to play is to click the link under the video as usual, but now I get to play. Let's get cracking. So the arrows... right, okay. I mean, so whenever you get arrow puzzles that point at a certain number of cells, it's always good to look at the ones that are sort of close to the edge, that are pointing to very few cells. Now, I can actually say something semi-reasonable about both of these cells straight away, because I don't think either of those could be 3. Is what I'm going to claim. Because let's say that was 3. That's saying that along this diagonal there are 3 shaded cells, including the cell itself. So let's shade all those in. We'll make them grey. Now, the reason I don't think this can be right is that now you can see this area here. It can't all be grey, because if it was, we'd have a 2x2 of grey. So there must be something unshaded in this little triomino. Let's make it that one. But now this one has to connect to all the rest of the greens in the grid, and there must be other greens on this side of this grey wall somewhere, because if there wasn't, then the entirety of the sort of southwest corner of the grid would be grey, and that most certainly breaks the 2x2 rule. But at the moment we put a green in the other side of the wall, we can't connect these orthogonally. So this is all completely and utterly broken, and what we can say instead is I think these are a 1-2. I was going to say a 1-2 pair. Now that might be wrong. Do they have to be different, or could they be the same? Well, hang on. I'm not sure. Actually, I'm not sure. So if that was shaded, let me think about this. If that was shaded, and it was, let's say it was a 2. Then it would be saying that one of these was shaded. But if that was shaded, let's make that one shaded, then we're saying that there is, we can't have another shaded 2, can we? Because then we'd have 2 shaded 2s, which we're not allowed to have according to the rules. But that would be a shaded 2, unless that was shaded as well. Yeah, so there's a problem. Yeah, I'm not sure about this, but I think that these might have to be different colours. But what about that one then? See, that one might be able to be 3, because that would just be saying that those 3 are shaded. Yeah, I'm less confident about this one. What about that one? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, but that one as well. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. This. Oh, that's. What did we say the size of the grid was? 10 by 10. Okay. But oh, maybe it's something to do with if you have the same arrow looking. I want to say, and this might be wrong, that these have to be different colours. Because if they were the same colour, this diagonal, all of those squares are clearly included in both counts, aren't they? So, but then this would count itself in that one, and that would count itself. Yeah, these have to be different. If they were both unshaded, we'd only be counting the purple ones, and these would contain the same number. It's a strange rule. Yeah. Okay. So if you have two arrows pointing across the grid at the same set of cells, yeah. So this comes back to this point. These do have to be different. I don't know why I could see it more clearly with a greater distance in the diagonal. That's a bit strange, isn't it? But yes, now I can see that these two both count this purple cell in terms of whether it's shaded or unshaded. They both will count its quality. Let's put it like that. A chance for Faramir to show his quality. So this square, if that's shaded and this was also shaded, they're both going to be shaded twos. If these are both unshaded, they're both unshaded ones. So these are different. Okay, all right. And that's so weird that I could see that on the long diagonal, but not the short diagonal. Now down here. So down here we've got the same thing we've got up there. And these have to be different as well by the same sort of lemma that we've just discovered in the positive diagonal. But yeah, I see. This is a 3. Right. Okay. So what we've got, if we just take a look at these squares here, each of these squares individually can either have the quality of being on or off. It's sort of binary. It's either shaded or unshaded, isn't it? So let's imagine this was a shaded 1. How many of the rest of these could be shaded 1s? The answer is 0. And that means if any of the others are shaded, they have to be a shaded 2. But then once we've had a shaded 1 and a shaded 2, we can have no more shaded 1s or shaded 2s. So the other two are going to have to be unshaded, and they're going to have to be different. So they're going to be an unshaded 1 and an unshaded 2. So that means that these 4 purple squares comprise the entire set of 1s and 2s, shaded and unshaded. And this square cannot be a 1 or a 2. It simply cannot be, because there is no third race. We are not playing StarCraft 2. This is not the Zerg or something. So this is a 3, and once it's a 3, don't we now have to shade all of those digits? And that's my first deduction, look. So and we worked out one of these was shaded and one of these was unshaded. So whichever one of these is... Imagine this was shaded, then this would have to be shaded as well. And this would be unshaded, and this would be unshaded. Okay. Right, here is probably what we have to think about. So, I have not even begun to talk about some of the secrets of Yin-Yang, but let me share some of those with you, because I think we're going to have to be thinking about the perimeter soon. So, let's talk about patterns in Yin-Yang. Let's start with this one, a checkerboard within a 2x2. Is this ever possible? The answer is no, because if we do have a checkerboard, remember we have to connect these greys up. So to do that, it doesn't matter how complicated the route is that we take to do that. It's now impossible to connect orthogonally the two greens. And it wouldn't matter if we went the other way. Obviously, if we went the other way, we've got exactly the same problem. We've got a pool of green here that can't get out. So you could never have a checkerboard. But that leads to a sort of secondary point, which is that around the perimeter of a yin-yang, you've got to be very careful about how many changes of colour you have. You can have a change of colour once, basically, but you can't have more than that, because let's say you started to do this sort of thing. I can tell you this puzzle is already broken, and it's a similar logic to that we've just analysed in a 2x2. You've got to connect these greens together, and it doesn't matter how you do it. You are going to build a wall across the puzzle that prevents this grey from connecting to its friends over here. So we're going to have to be very careful. What that means is that the perimeter of these puzzles is either entirely one colour, that is possible. So we could do something like that. That would not be, or that would be possible at least. You could have one change of colour, so we could have one stretch of green in the perimeter. But once you've had that stretch of green, you can't then have another stretch of green in a different place. So yeah, because these are different colours. Well, hang on. Yeah, I worked out before, didn't I, that this has to be not grey. Otherwise these two numbers would be shaded and have the same total. So there is a green here. Oh, let's take that out. I was thinking this is really good because I can connect these up. But no, that's not how the puzzle works. That's an anachronism left from some nonsense that I did earlier. But one of these is grey and one of these is green. So, yes, okay. So that being the case, there is a change of colour that occurs within this section of the grid. There is a change of colour on the perimeter, isn't there? And the same is true up here. Within that section of the grid there is a change of colour on the perimeter, because one of these is green and one of these is grey. So these are the only two colours changes that are ever possible in the perimeter of this puzzle, and that means that all of these squares are one colour and all of these squares are a different colour. Confirming our views of those two squares. Three, four, five. Oh, but that could be itself a 6, couldn't it? So that's a 3. So I can't have any more shaded 3s. Not that I was particularly thinking I was going to. So do we have to think about these then? Yeah, well, one thing we can do is take 1s and 2s out of all of those. Yeah, this is probably what we have to do. We have to take 1s and 2s out of these because there are no more 1s and 2s. If there is a 3 in any of these, it's an unshaded 3. But an unshaded 3 is still pointing at 3 shaded digits. So if any of those are an unshaded 3, hang on. Right. These two squares might be actually something that we need to think about. Yes, okay, so the extrapolation. Let's actually just delete this for a moment and delete this for a moment. And let's think about this a bit more carefully. Now, I can have one change of colour in the perimeter. So, if, for example, that's grey, what is not possible is that this is green. These have to be the same colour, is what I'm going to contend. Because otherwise I am going to get a second change of colour. Because by the fact that we know these are different colours, this will now be grey and this will be green. And you can see in connecting this grey up, these greens can't then breach the grey wall. So we can't do that. And the reason that's interesting to me is that means that whatever these digits are, and these are pointing along this diagonal, we've got to make sure that whatever numbers we put in here, they cater for the fact that those are the same colour. So in fact, I'm going to restore my earlier colouring, but I'm going to extend it slightly into these squares. Now, if either of these is a 3, it's an unshaded 3. It's an unshaded 3. If this is an unshaded... See, if that's an unshaded 3, both of these have to be 4s and 5s, which means there's an awful lot of shadedness on this diagonal. I don't know. I feel like it's very difficult for what is my orange colour to be green. I mean, I know it's difficult chromatically, but that's what I feel. Because I just... Even if these are well, especially in a way if these are unshaded, they're still reasonably large numbers. Yeah, I mean, if both of these... If orange was green, how could we ever achieve that? Well, what would happen then is that these squares would all be grey. Well, that doesn't work because they'd both be grey. That's it. Okay, I've done it. I sort of backed into this, I think. Right. That's very peculiar. It's very pretty, actually, and not just the colours I've drawn. Right. So let me explain. We have proved that these two squares are the same colour. Now, I'm going to let's just hypothesize for a moment that this is the green stretch of digits, so purple is the grey stretch of digits. Okay, so let's go with this hypothesis and see whether it could possibly be correct. Now, you can see that the only way either of these two squares is a 3 is if it's an unshaded 3. And if it's an unshaded 3, in fact it's impossible for it to be an unshaded 3 if these two are both green now. Because to be an unshaded 3, let's try it, it's seeing 3 shaded cells. So these would all be shaded. And now this is shaded and it can't be an unshaded 3, a shaded 3, so it's a shaded 4 or 5, but it only sees 2. So in fact, if you do go for greens in the perimeter, in the sort of southwest side of the grid, what actually happens is neither of these can be a 3, and they both have to be shaded. And their maximum counts now for shadedness is 4. They can't reach 5, so they'd both be shaded 4s, and you can't have repeated shaded 4s. So it gets too claustrophobic if both of these are green, and therefore, in fact, what we've learned, keep going backwards here, because we can go all the way back to here, and we actually know that orange is grey, and we know purple is green, and therefore, okay, and now I can do this, because that's a 2, because it sees 2, including itself. I want to say that's a 1. No, oh no, hang on, that's a 2. That shows how well I've internalised this rule. So, yeah, that's a 2, because it's counting the shadeds. Okay, so these are probably both 1s, otherwise I've made a big ricket. Well, well, they must both be 1s by dint of the rule, so they can't be 2s. And, okay, so this square is unshaded. Because, and that makes it correct, this 1 is counting its shaded cells and it's counting itself effectively. Right, so this is now shaded, because it can't be unshaded and connect. So this is now unshaded, otherwise we've got a 2 by 2 that's entirely shaded. This is now unshaded, which has to get out and connect to all its unshaded friends. You can't have a checkerboard, so that is shaded. And we're actually off to the races. This is a very interesting puzzle, actually. I'm not sure. That's got to be unshaded, so this is shaded. We've got sort of symmetrical logic on this side of the grid, except... Okay, except we don't know, apparently this is unshaded, because we don't have the equivalent of this clue. So we can't say that has to escape. Right. Okay, so how have these clues developed? If at all. Well... Hang on. What can that be? 1, 2, 3. Perhaps it could be a shaded 4. I don't know. Okay. I'm unsure. What about that one? Do we know anything extra about this one? That's either... Well, if it's a shaded 5, it can't be an unshaded 5, because then it would be saying that there are 5 shaded cells in that sequence, but it itself would be unshaded, so you could never reach that. But it could be a shaded 5. No, it can't. No, it can't be a shaded 5, because that's got to be unshaded. Right. Yeah. So that's just not able to be 5 at all, because this has to be unshaded to prevent this being a 2 by 2. So this is now shaded or unshaded 4. So, okay, the only way this is a 3... Right, so these two are definitely shaded. Because the only way this is a 3 is if it's an unshaded 3. But even if it's an unshaded 3, it's got to count 3 shaded cells along the diagonal. And the only way it can get to 3 is if these two are shaded. And if it's 4, the only way... there's 4 shaded cells as if this is itself shaded, but these two are then also shaded. So how's that improved our knowledge of the world? I don't know. I don't know. Okay. So, I don't know then. So if I knew that this was unshaded, both of these would become 4s and 5s. But I would have to try to make sure they weren't the same number. I mean, if that's shaded, one of these would have to be unshaded, otherwise we're going to get into a 2 by 2 problem. So if this is shaded, one of these is an unshaded 3. No, that's not necessarily true, actually. Okay, sorry, I'm not exactly seeing what I meant to do here. That's got to be shaded, I suppose. Again, to avoid a 2 by 2. Have I missed some obvious point here? You're all shouting at me saying, yes, you have. You silly man. Maybe, can I prove there has to be an unshaded in one of those? If these were both... Oh, I don't know. I feel like this diagonal is most likely to be restricted. Yeah, I mean, that is interesting, isn't it? Maybe this is the diagonal we have to look at. Yeah, how can these two be anything other than shaded? These two here. might be a deduction that's worth its salt, because let's go through the options for this square. It's either unshaded 3. If it's unshaded 3, these are both shaded. Or it can't be unshaded 4 or 5 because we couldn't get to the correct count. But it could be shaded 4. And then obviously these are both shaded. So these are both shaded. Sorry, I should have seen that before. Okay, so that's become shaded. So it can't be 3. So this is now 4 or 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. It could be 5. That's surprising. This can't be 5 anymore. It simply cannot be 5, because to be 5, it would be saying all of these cells are shaded. So this is not 5. So these are 3, 4 pair, or could they both be the same? Well, I don't know. I'm thinking if they're both 4s, one of them could be shaded and one of them could be unshaded. Right. This is, it's very, very peculiar. Right. So how do we do this? I mean, I think it's going to be a case of thinking these through. And if that's 5, all of these are shaded. Okay, let's think that through. So if this is 5, all of these are shaded. That would be very powerful for the Yin-Yang. And this would be a shaded 4. So this would have to be, that would have to be unshaded 3, is what it would have to be. So that works, actually. I think shaded 5, shaded 4, unshaded 3 is one possibility. Okay, so the only way this could be a 3 is if it's unshaded. Does that not work for some reason? So if this is unshaded, now this would have to be a 4, because there are no 3s left. So this has to be shaded in order to get the count correct. And now this is broken, because this needs to be shaded 5, and that doesn't work. Wow. Isn't that clever? So actually, the way it works here is that this is not. The only way it works is if this is 5, these are all shaded in. That therefore is 4, and this has to be 3. Because although it could be shaded, to be shaded it would be shaded 4, which we've already had. So that's unshaded 3. And that stops us as well having a 2 by 2. But now look, the reason I thought this was interesting, well, there's many ways this is interesting. This green thing here has to get out. It's been corralled behind a grey wall of nonsense. So those all have to be green to allow that to get out. This has to be green. These will have to be green. Oh, we have to make this green. Otherwise, we can't get this out, obviously. So these can't both. This is one of each. This is one of each in order to not have 2 by 2s of either colour. This has to get out, so those have to be green. And all of a sudden, well, are we now in better shape than we were? Well, surely this digit's going to be almost impossible, isn't it? Because I've had shaded 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Oh, I see, but it could be unshaded. Oh, no. Okay, well, no, we're still okay. We're still okay. Because I was thinking I can't put enough shaded digits on this diagonal. But yeah, I mean, there's no way this can be shaded. Because if it's shaded, it would have to be a shaded 6, and there isn't enough diagonalage left. So this is unshaded. Both of these are shaded. Now, we've had unshaded 1, 2, and 3, so the best this can be is unshaded 4. And that's what it is. It's unshaded 4, and you shade everything else on the diagonal in order to get to the correct count. This is lovely. It's very, very clever. Really is. Okay, so I've now nearly finished all of the puzzle except, weirdly, the two diagonals. The long diagonals. Oh, yes, okay, but these are both shaded, aren't they? So they're going to have to be whopping great numbers. So what can we have? We could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's as much as 7, so it's 6 or 7, because it can't be less than that, because we haven't got 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 available. And this one is 1, 2, 3. Oh, hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now that's also a maximum of 7. Right. So these are a 6, 7 pair. So, oh, yeah. That's lovely. Right. So this is not 7. Sorry, I could have actually seen this already, but I didn't know the count. But if this was 7, what we're saying is every other cell on this diagonal is grey. Now look why that doesn't work. We've corralled this 3 in, we've pinched it in. It can't touch any neighbours. So this must be the 6. We have to let the 3 out somehow. So these are both grey, which means that's green, and that's got to get out. That's got to be grey to avoid being an isolated green. That's green to avoid. That's green. That's green. We can do this other diagonal in a moment, because most of this other diagonal now has to be grey. Yeah, those have to both be grey in order to get to a count of 7. And therefore, all we've got to do now is work out what this means. And if that's 7, presumably we can now work out, yeah, this square, yeah, that's the green, so that's the grey on the other. So this is green to get out. And we can't have 2 greys here, so at least one of these is green, which means that's green. At least one of these is green, which means that's green. So that's grey, so that's green, so that's grey. That's grey actually, isn't it? Otherwise we've got a real problem. So that's green, and that's green. I've lost track really of, these greys have to get out. Okay. So I haven't done, right, so let's do the count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, that's going to be 7, isn't it? That's going to be the same number as on the other diagonal. Yeah, that makes sense. That's exactly what we've seen in the other positions. It's just, it doesn't matter because these are obviously not the same colour, so we're not repeating a digit in the same colour. So all we've got to do now is somehow this yin-yang should solve from here. And our job is just going to be to work out why. Let's avoid a checkerboard there, so we can make that grey. So this is green. That grey's got to attach to its friends. That's got to be green to avoid a 2 by 2. That grey's got to connect to its friends. We're nearly there. Oh, yeah, look. If I double-click the greens, this is a stranded green piece. We've got a mote of green that we mustn't have. So we must connect it somehow to the edge. And the only way to do that is like that, and then avoid a 2 by 2. And that is the silly, we've got a sort of Joshua tree pattern on the right. That's absolutely brilliant. What a lovely puzzle, isn't it? Absolutely brilliant. Let's see. Oh, puzzle doesn't include solution. Okay, so I think it's right. It felt incredibly logical, but it doesn't know that it's right, I think. So I'll have to go away and do some due diligence to see whether or not this feels right. If it does, we'll find some way to allow people to check the answer in the software. I don't know what that way will be. We'll have to think about it because, yeah, it would be nice to find. Well, no, I mean, actually, if we just made it so that if these numbers were correct, the chances of these numbers being correct and the shading that had been used to deduce those numbers being wrong is very small, I would contest. So probably we just have to test that these numbers are correct and in the correct places. Yeah. So anyway, Shintaro, that is an absolutely wonderful puzzle. A real pleasure for me to do such a lovely logic puzzle today. Poseidon. It's oh, Trident. Is that what we're doing? Oh, it could be. Well, I wonder. Maybe. Maybe that's why it's called Poseidon. I don't know. Didn't Poseidon have a trident? Am I going mad? And I will allow the erudite the erudite of you, which is most of you, in the comments to let me know. I enjoy the comments, especially when they're kind. And we'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.